Saint Joseph, head of the Holy Family, taken from Terror of Demons, Reclaiming Traditional Catholic Masculinity by Kennedy Hall. Highly recommend this book. Saint Joseph, head of the Holy Family. The man's headship in the family, as I have discussed, is perhaps one of the most contentious issues amongst even faithful Catholics today. It is such a stumbling block for women and even men that many priests try to skirt the issue whenever the words, "Wives, be subject to your husbands as it behooveth the Lord," Colossians chapter 3, verse 18, come up in the lessons for the sacred liturgy. Our society is pathetically antipathetic towards the traditional role of the husband as the head of the household. It is easy enough to understand how the various toxic philosophies so rampant today have brought disorder into the home. However, many do not stop to consider how this lack of male headship creates a vacuum, which either the woman will fill or no one will fill properly. Headship of a family is built into the very nature of a man. When he fails at this task, it affects the health of the whole family and consequently all of society. Wives who are not led and served by a loving and self-sacrificing husband are not secure. Daughters who cannot look to a father who is on a mission to sanctify his family will encounter difficulty in understanding their worth as a child of God, the Father. Furthermore, sons of this situation will be stunted in their development as men, which means they will have to work so much harder to reorder things correctly when they have their own family. We can be certain that Saint Joseph showed proper headship of the Holy Family. He demonstrated this on many occasions, not least of which in his role as pillar of families and chaste guardian of the Virgin. Men today need not only an example of headship, but also an example of how to become a man who is ready for the role. We all need to be freed from the bondage by which a world opposed to God envelops us. Men should not be surprised when they encounter resistance to God's established order and their headship within their own household. However, before being enraged by the speck of dust in the eyes of wives and children, men should strive to remove the beams of wood from their own eye. Matthew chapter 7, verse 5. It is futile to try and force one's family to accept the proper order of things when one himself is not properly ordered. In fact, precisely because the man is the head of the family, he naturally sets the example for those under his authority to follow. A man should realize that, in general, his family will reject his authority to the degree with which he himself rejects God's authority. It is often even to a greater degree on account of our fallen nature. For example, consider how readily children amplify the faults of their parents. If you have a long-lived worldly life with disorder in the roots of your interior life and within the fabric of your home, it will be humanly impossible for you to right the ship. I say humanly impossible, but it is not impossible with God's grace and by his guidance. As we mentioned previously, when Moses went up to the mountain to receive the Ten Commandments, we read that in the Holy Bible that the people rose up to play. Exodus chapter 32, verse 6. Meaning ritual debauchery. So the people rose up to play, meaning ritual debauchery. Aaron was the weak man who had not truly left Egypt, where Moses was the man of God who had thoroughly rejected Egypt. It cannot be overemphasized. Just as the Hebrews who went out of Egypt retained many pagan ideas and desires, so too many Catholics cling to the Egypt within their souls. Every step we take towards emptying our hearts of worldly desires of the world's false maxims, vanities, and fleeting pleasures is a step we can take towards God. Yet if our heart is filled with love of transitory things, there is no room in it for the love of the eternal. In this we must imitate Moses, not Aaron. We should, however, not make the error of thinking that Aaron was a kind and understanding leader, having compassion for the people's weaknesses, i.e. sin, whereas Moses was strict and uncaring. Aaron actually tries to excuse his grievous sin by blaming the people and speaks as if he had no role in calling for gold in fashioning the idolatrous calf. Exodus chapter 32, verses 2 to 4. Instead, he implies that the calf spontaneously emerged from the fire. Verse 24. Moses, on the other hand, intercedes for the people and begs God to forgive them. God threatens to wipe them from the face of the earth, and Moses pleads for God to have mercy for his own name's sake, verses 11 to 13. Moses then freely offers himself as a reparatory sacrifice to God, accepting the people's sin as his own and asking God to punish him instead, verses 31 to 32. Moses clearly serves as a prefigurement for Christ, whereas Aaron acts as an imitator of Adam. These are the two choices constantly before every man, to act like the old Adam or like the new Adam. Do you excuse your own sin and blame those under you, deluding yourself that you are kind and compassionate? Or do you faithfully adhere to God's ways, accept responsibility for the sins of those under you, and offer yourself as a sacrifice, willingly accepting the just punishments for their sins? Herein we seek the mark of a real man who truly serves and leads as the head of his family according to God's right order. This reality lies in the essence of priesthood, to willingly offer sacrifice on behalf of his people. Every husband and father is called to live thus for his family. Even more so is every Catholic priest ordained for this role. The bishop is called to heroically live this for his diocesan flock, and above all, the Pope ought to exemplify this most perfectly as Christ's vicar on earth. In order to become the domestic priests we are called to be, we need to follow Moses' example. Yet before we can willingly offer ourselves in reparatory sacrifice, we must spend time in the desert. This means that we need to embrace ascetical practices in an intentional way. If we were to rid our souls of Egypt and become men fashioned after the model of Moses and St. Joseph, then we must begin our exodus from effeminacy immediately. Do not hesitate to challenge yourself. With God's grace, every man is capable of achieving great virtue and recapturing the proper spiritual and moral headship over himself and his family. St. Joseph, head of the Holy Family, pray for us. Catholic Northman, out.